Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm bringing you another episode in the story of James and Diep, a journey filled with unfinished emotions, worries, and twists neither of them ever expected. In the previous episode, as you all saw, James was forced by his father to go to Cambodia for work. It happened so suddenly that he couldn't prepare anything, couldn't explain properly to Diep. And then, just one day after arriving there, he completely disappeared from all contact. From that moment on, Diep's phone fell into a suffocating cycle. Calling, waiting for the dial tone, only to hear the cold automated message. The number you are trying to reach is currently unavailable. At first, Diep tried to calm herself. She thought James was busy. Thought maybe the signal was bad. Thought he would call back any moment. But day after day passed. No messages. No signs. No response at all. Back at home, Diep still had to push through her daily life. Taking care of little Nee, squeezing in all kinds of work from early morning till late at night. Tired? Yes. Exhausted? Absolutely. But what drained her the most was the empty feeling every time she picked up her phone and still didn't see James's name light up. Just a few minutes of pausing her work was enough for her heart to clench again. She couldn't hide the worry, a kind of worry so heavy it made her chest tighten. And little Nee. She was only 3 years old, but the affection she had for James ran far deeper than her age. Every day she would run to her mother, tugging and pleading. "Mom, call Uncle James." Every time the call failed, she would burst into tears, eyes red, voice trembling, a mix of sadness, longing, and disappointment. Seeing her daughter like that only made Diep more anxious, more unsure of what to say, and even more afraid deep inside. At the same time, a different story was unfolding in the background. Fat's mother had fallen seriously ill. The doctors mentioned surgery, a surgery so expensive that Fat had no idea where he could possibly get the money. Many nights, he sat beside her hospital bed, watching her grow weaker, feeling like the whole world was collapsing onto his shoulders. That was when James's father appeared. Not to help out of kindness, but to offer a deal. He handed Fat the money, enough to save his mother. And in return, he wanted Fat to follow his instructions. There were no direct threats, but the cold, decisive look in the man's eyes told Fat exactly what kind of path he was stepping onto. And the task he was given was to separate James and Diep. On one side was the mother lying helplessly on the hospital bed. On the other side were James and Diep, people who had never treated Fat unkindly. But desperation pushes people into choices they never wanted to make. And that's where everything begins. Join today's video to see how the story continues. The days of James' absence stretched on as if they had no end. They were no longer ordinary days, but heavy blocks of time pressing down on Diep's shoulders. Each morning when she opened her eyes, her gaze would blur for a few seconds, as if she wasn't ready to face another day without a single trace of James. Time passed so slowly it felt as though someone was deliberately pulling each minute, each hour apart. Just to make her waiting longer, harsher, and more bitter. In the early mornings, when the mist still curled around the mountaintops and the cold wind lingered between the trees, Diep had to go up to the fields to harvest taro for the workers. The dirt path leading to the fields hadn't changed, still uneven, still familiar, but today it felt a few steps longer, a few breaths heavier. The sound of her rubber sandals scraping against the ground and her steady breathing couldn't hide the exhaustion draining her body. Rows of taro plants stood neatly lined, their leaves wide and green, soil clinging to their roots. Diep bent down, pulling each plant out with her hands. The fine soil crumbled with every tug. Large, solid, heavy taro bulbs dropped into the basket, heavy enough to numb her arms, though she barely had the mind to notice. From row to row, carrying load after load from dawn until nearly noon, sweat slid from the nape of her neck down her back, turning cold when touched by the morning breeze. Every drop that fell onto the earth seemed to carry away a piece of the worry tangled in her chest. And the moment she paused, even for a heartbeat, her mind wandered off again. Not home. Not lunch. But all the way to Cambodia, the place where James had vanished as if he had never existed. She had never been there. But now, just hearing the word Cambodia made her chest squeeze tight, like a needle pricking straight into her heart. It was where the man she and Little Nee loved was supposed to be. Yet it was also the place tied to one terrifying phrase: total disappearance. The more she thought about it, the more it felt like an invisible hand was squeezing her chest. Helplessness, fear, anxiety, all mixing together until she could hardly breathe. When she returned home in the afternoon, there was no rest waiting for her either. The house only had the two of them, but the work stacked higher than a mountain. She sat down, weighing each bag of taro, noting everything carefully in her ledger, calculating every bit of profit, every bit of expense. She wouldn't allow herself to make a mistake. Wouldn't allow herself to break. Her hands remained steady, quick, practiced as always. But her eyes told a different story. They no longer carried their usual clarity, only fatigue, dullness, and a quiet, persistent worry she didn't dare voice aloud. At this point, Diep herself felt like a machine forced to run non-stop. Working, recording, calculating, cleaning, taking care of her child. On repeat, every day mirroring the last. But her heart had already worn thin. Just one accidental question like, "Has James called yet?" would make her throat tighten, tears threatening to spill. Her fear for him was no longer just an emotion. It had become a shadow hanging over every moment of her day. While working, while eating, even when she tried to sleep. Her small family was missing one person. And missing a piece of peace she had no idea when, or if, she would ever get back. Little Me couldn't hide her emotions the way adults do. She was still too young to understand what was happening. Yet just old enough to know that someone important to her was no longer here. Every mealtime, the moment she lifted her bowl, she would look up. Her big round eyes shimmering. And ask in a tiny, innocent voice that somehow hurt even more because of its sincerity. "Mom, can we call Uncle James now?" That question repeated every day, every meal, every time she sat at the table. Some days she asked 3 times, 4 times. Some days she held her spoon with teary eyes, refusing to eat unless she got to call him first. At night, when the world grew quieter, with only the sound of insects and the warm yellow glow inside the house, she would start crying again. A child's cry, small, fragile, and sharp enough to tear through any adult's heart. She would bury her face into Diep's neck, sobbing between breaths. "I want to see Uncle James. I miss him. I want him to hug me." Those simple words felt like someone squeezing Diep's heart in their fist, tight, relentless, painful. All she could do was hold the little girl close, one hand rubbing her back, the other gently cradling her head against her shoulder. Her throat tightened until she couldn't speak. She wanted to tell the child that everything would be okay. She wanted to promise that James would come back soon. But she couldn't, because she herself didn't know. Because she missed him too. So much that the moment she closed her eyes, James's face appeared. So much that even breathing carried the weight of worry. So much that her longing was 100 times heavier than the child's. Yet every time she picked up her phone, fingers trembling as she dialed his number, heart pounding as if trying to break free from her chest, the screen would show that same haunting line. "The number you are trying to reach is currently unavailable. The operator's voice was emotionless, cold. Like a stone dropped straight into her chest. There was no hope in it. Only a chilling reminder. James was somewhere far beyond her reach. And all Diep could do was hold little knee tighter, shielding her from the fear spreading through her own chest. Unable to endure any more long nights of waiting and hopeless calls, Diep finally decided to go to James's mother's house. She couldn't sit still and guess anymore. Her heart felt like it was cracking apart under the weight of worry. If she didn't ask directly, she felt like she would lose her mind. The road to James's mother's house felt longer than usual that day. Not because of the distance, but because her heart felt as heavy as stone. With each step, her legs grew weaker, caught between hope and fear. The moment Diep stepped into the yard, James's mother was already standing at the doorway. Her expression carried a confusion she couldn't hide. Her eyes were red, as if she too had been losing sleep for days. "Diep, is that you?" Her voice trembled slightly, not like usual. Diep hadn't even spoken yet when the woman let out a long, weary sigh, as if releasing all the burdens she'd been holding in her chest. "I can't reach him either, dear. These past few days I've been trying again and again, but all I hear is the operator. But his father says James is fine in Cambodia, that he's busy handling work." Her voice tried to sound calm, but Diep could clearly hear the uneasiness stitched into every word. No one could reach him. No one knew exactly what he was doing. No one understood why he had suddenly vanished into silence. Hearing that, a small bit of weight lifted off Diep's heart. She forced a faint smile and nodded, hoping it would ease James's mother's worries, even though her own thoughts were tangled beyond control. But beneath that hint of relief, was a thin layer of doubt clawing at her chest. If things were truly fine, just like James's father claimed, then why didn't James call? Just one call. One message. One line of text. One tiny sign. She wasn't asking for much. Just proof that he was still safe. Yet there was nothing. For so many days. A silence so absolute it was terrifying. Standing at James's mother's doorway, Diep felt two emotions pulling her in opposite directions. The mother's words made her want to believe in something good. But James's complete silence dragged her straight back into fear. It was a strange mix of half relief, half choking anxiety. So suffocating she felt like screaming to the sky. "If you're really safe, then where are you?" That afternoon, the last sunlight of the day spread across the porch in a thin golden layer. Beautiful, yes, but for Diep, there was no peace in it at all. She had just finished sorting the baskets of taro and was about to step inside when she heard footsteps approaching the gate. Those footsteps. So familiar she didn't need to look to know who it was. Yet somehow, each step made her heart tighten a little more. Fat appeared. But this was no longer the old Fat. The one who forced fake smiles and light-hearted words to win sympathy. No more awkward friendliness, no more soft tone. Today, his face was cold. Cold like a slab of stone just pulled from the bottom of a well. His eyes were dark, deep, and filled with something toxic. The kind of look that sent a shiver down Diep's spine the moment she met it. He stood at the gate. Didn't enter. Didn't sit. Didn't even pretend to be polite. The way he stood there, rigid, silent for several seconds before speaking, made the air in the yard tighten like a stretched wire. Then he spoke. His voice was hoarse, low, and so firm it raised every goosebump on Diep's arms. "Diep. I'll be direct." Just that one sentence made her chest sink. Her heart pounded hard, each thud loud like a drum inside her ears. A sharp wave of uneasiness cut through her, fast as a blade. He stared at her without blinking. Then the words fell, each one cold, dry, and emotionless. "You need to cut ties with James. Or take little knee and leave. Stop all contact." Each word was like a hammer dropping. No circling around. No softening. Not even giving her a moment to breathe. The world spun for a second. Diep looked at him, lips trembling. It took her several breaths before she could force out a small, stunned question. "Why would I do that?" Fat didn't look away. His eyes locked onto hers, icy enough to make her shiver. The silence between them lasted only a few seconds. But those seconds felt heavy. Long. Almost endless. Then he answered. Clear, calm, but sharp as a blade. "If you don't, the consequences will be very serious." No yelling. No threats shouted in anger. Just one short sentence. But enough to crush a person from the inside. He turned around after saying it. Didn't give her time to ask anything more. Didn't look back. His footsteps hit the ground one by one. Slow, heavy. As if burying the air around them with every step. Diep stood frozen on the doorstep. Afraid to move. Afraid to breathe too loudly. His shadow disappeared down the dirt road, leaving behind a yard so empty it felt terrifying. The air thickened. So thick it seemed like someone had drained all the oxygen from the house. No wind. No birds. Nothing. And then, little Nee's cry echoed from inside the house. A small cry, but full of fear. As if she sensed something wrong had just happened outside. The sound made Diep's heart twist painfully. Her throat tightened. Tears stung her eyes, but she forced them back. Her hands shook uncontrollably. She didn't understand everything that was happening. But she knew one thing for certain. At the moment Fat walked away. A danger, very close, very real, was silently closing in on the two of them. That night, the small house sank into a silence so heavy you could almost hear your own heartbeat. Darkness filled every corner of the room, leaving only a faint patch of yellow light spilling from the old lamp on the bedside table. That light flickered weakly, like the trembling breath of someone trying to hold on to their last bit of patience. Outside, the wind slipped through the tin roof, creating a long, humming sound. In the cold night, that sound felt like a whisper of unease, a reminder of the unseen things lurking ahead, things Diep couldn't name, couldn't understand, but could feel tightening around her. The sense of dread seeped into the air, into her chest, into every breath she took. Diep sat beside the bed, watching little Nee. The child was curled up like a tiny kitten, cheeks still marked with faint traces of dried tears, the evidence of her sobbing earlier. Her long eyelashes trembled gently with each breath. Her small chest rose and fell in a steady, peaceful rhythm. A stark contrast to the storm swelling inside her mother's heart. The sight made Diep's chest tighten even more. A pain both warm and sharp, the kind adults swallow down so children can sleep safely in their arms. Her hands were clasped tightly on her lap, fingers pressing into each other until her knuckles turned white. She couldn't stop thinking about Fat's words from earlier. Every syllable he spoke felt hammered into her ears, cold, sharp, and now, in the stillness of night, they echoed even louder than when he had said them to her face. The more she thought about it, the colder her spine felt. Fear didn't crash down suddenly. It crept in slowly, quietly, like a cold draft sliding from the back of her neck all the way into her heart. She knew Fat hadn't said those things for no reason. No normal person would show up with a warning like that. She didn't know the details, but she understood one thing clearly. Whatever pushed him to do that, couldn't be good. But despite all the doubts closing in on her, one thing had never wavered. Her faith in James. Not blind faith. Not naive belief. But trust built from the days they spent together. From the way he cared. From how he loved little Nee. From every word he said and every action he took. James was not a man who would turn his back. Not someone who would disappear for no reason. Not someone who could abandon her and her child in a moment of hardship. If he was silent, then something had happened. Something big, something serious, something he couldn't fight his way out of yet. A tear rolled down Diep's cheek before she could stop it. Her heart felt stretched thin, pulled painfully in every direction. But she knew she couldn't collapse. Not now. She looked at little Nee. That peaceful breath was the reason she had to stay strong. She drew in a deep breath, so long her chest ached, as if gathering every last piece of courage left inside her. Then, in the dim room, she bowed her head slightly and whispered, her voice trembling, yet unexpectedly firm. "Come what may. I'll wait for you." It wasn't just reassurance. Not something said to soothe a child. Not a line to get through the night. It was a vow. A vow she carved into her heart in the darkest moment. When the world around her felt like it was falling apart. She would stay standing. She would fight through everything. She would wait for James. With every ounce of trust, love, and burning longing in her every breath. Meanwhile, in Cambodia, the truth was nothing like what everyone believed. James wasn't handling shipments. Wasn't meeting partners. Wasn't doing market research. Every reason, every word, was just an excuse his father had crafted with cold, precise calculation. On the outside, everyone thought James was busy with work. But in reality, he was being held under tight control. No chains. No handcuffs. But the restrictions placed on him were far more cruel than that. The moment he landed in Cambodia, his phone was confiscated. To avoid exposing sensitive information, they said. His devices were cut off from all network access. His schedule was locked from morning until night. Every minute controlled. Leaving not even a crack for communication. His father's staff followed him like shadows. If he stepped half a pace back, they were already at his shoulder. He couldn't make calls. Couldn't send messages. Couldn't do anything outside the script his father had set. Every day felt like being trapped inside an invisible box. Beautiful on the outside. Suffocating on the inside. And above that suffocation hung one single question. What did his father want? The answer wasn't hard to guess. He wanted Diep gone from James's life. He wanted her tired. He wanted her frightened. He wanted her hopeless enough to walk away on her own. He wanted James to see her silence and believe their relationship wasn't worth keeping. He wanted his son back on the path he had chosen for him. Back in the right position. The right role. The perfect mold he had spent years building. James was locked inside a luxurious yet freezing hotel room. Door locked from the outside. A hallway camera pointed toward him. Guards stationed on his floor. He sat on the edge of the bed. Hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles turned white. His breathing was heavy. His eyes reddened with anger. With helplessness. With fear for the two people who meant the most to him. No phone. No email. No way to tell Diep he was still alive. No way to hear little Nee's voice calling Uncle James. The room was so silent he could hear his heartbeat echo. And in that suffocating stillness, James lowered his head, tightened his fists, pressed his lips together, and whispered a promise, small and sound, but stronger than any shout. Diep. Nee, wait for me. Just one short sentence. But it carried everything he had left. His strength. His will. His belief. A promise with no clear path toward fulfilling it. But one James would never abandon. Diep was worried, but she did not fall. Even though each day felt like a stone pressing on her chest. Even though the phone only echoed with the cold voice of the operator. She remained standing. In the tired eyes of that increasingly thin woman. There was still something no one could extinguish. Her faith in James. Little Nee missed him, but she still hoped. A tiny child who could only cry to cope with longing. Yet every night before falling asleep, she would whisper, "Uncle James will call me, right, Mom?" Sometimes, the hope of a child is the very light that keeps adults from collapsing. James was imprisoned, but he refused to give up. Inside that luxurious yet freezing hotel room, where every step, every breath, every moment of sleep was monitored, James still held one truth close to his heart. No matter how long he was confined, he would return to Diep and little Nee. That thought was the only thing holding him together. As the invisible walls around him tightened day by day. And fat. He wasn't done. His warning was only the beginning. The next task was approaching. Like darkness slowly crawling into the lives of Diep and her daughter. See you in the next episode. Will James find a way to escape and return to Diep and little Nee? Or will his father's scheme turn the distance between them into something permanent? The answer will be revealed in tomorrow's video. Stay tuned for the next chapter. And don't forget to leave a comment to send strength to Diep and little Nee. They need everyone's support now more than ever.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Này thì mình cũng đang làm video. Mình thì bây giờ thì mình edit cũng gần xong rồi, còn mấy cái lung tung nữa là có thể hoàn thành. Mình đang đặt tên cho video. Không biết nên đặt tên là gì cho hợp lý đây. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại trong những video sau.